Jill Carnegie of Slaughter Free NYC, an animal rights group, says there are about 80 wet markets in the city.
New York City is the global epicenter of the current pandemic. The absolute disgusting irony is that New York City is home to more of these markets than any other city in the United States.
So we got some big news from New York yesterday. Jill, do you want to break that down for people?
Yes, so yesterday we had announced from Linda Rosenthal and Louis Sepulveda here in New York that they are introducing Bill A10399. I still have to check my notes because it's so new. I need to make sure I get all the numbers right. And this is essentially an emergency piece of legislation that would immediately shut down all of the animal markets in New York City, of which there's approximately 80. And then there would be a task force convened from various different committees, all with expertise in infectious disease and other related fields, to go through and do a thorough risk assessment on all of these markets before they can even be considered for reopening. So this is pretty groundbreaking stuff.
This is huge. And just to clarify for people watching, so a live animal market is essentially a small-scale slaughterhouse, also known as a wet market, depending on terminology.
Yes. So our favorite term for these markets is actually storefront slaughterhouse, because that's literally what they are. But that's not the regional terminology that's normally used for these markets. So basically what we're talking about here are these are kind of like mini factory farms that the public can just walk into, and which is insane on its face, frankly. But in Asia and some other countries over in Europe and around Australia, they often refer to these markets as wet markets or wet animal markets. In New York and a lot of the United States, we tend to refer to these markets as live markets, which is actually the term that I find most offensive, to call a slaughterhouse a live market.
Absolutely.
And I think that, I've been trying to research where that came from, and I really think that it just has to do with some of the dialects and languages that are used to name these markets. So for example, here in New York, a lot of them are called viveros, which translates basically to live market. And I think that's why we call them that here. But they're all the same thing. They're all smaller scale factory farms that any member of the public can just walk into and order animals to be slaughtered on demand.
Yeah, I used to live in New York. I actually walked into one by accident because it had beautiful artwork on the side of the building of animals. And I'm like, oh, what is this place? They have a nice mural here. And it was a chicken slaughterhouse. It was, a horrible experience, but I'm glad that I at least got to witness it firsthand, know that it exists. So, Maureen, do you want to break us down the connection between these slaughterhouses and COVID-19 and animal-borne diseases, zoonotic diseases in general, to see what's the connection here?
Sure. Excuse me in advance, I'm quite long-winded.
No worries.
So just to first clarify, we're not asserting that COVID-19 came from the wet markets here in New York City. What we're saying is that, these zoonotic diseases that are born from these environments that are impossible to keep clean. And, all animals, some epidemiologists have said that all animals carry their own viruses, but when they are crammed together in these unsanitary, unnatural conditions, it is inevitable that they then transfer diseases to each other and ultimately to humans as well. And
right. Yeah, I've heard it described as a nightclub for viruses.
Right. And so when, it's not just workers or customers that are put at risk, it's anyone that steps foot or anyone in the vicinity of these areas. They are tracking the blood, the feces, the carcass, the excrement, just all of this carnage essentially that spills out onto public spaces and into sewers and that decreases the air quality. It's just wholly unnatural and poses a health risk to everybody.
Absolutely. I saw a scientific study just recently that said completely independent of COVID-19 on a so-called normal year, approximately 2.3 million people die from animal-borne diseases. And that's everything from listeriosis to E. coli and salmonella that people are familiar with, to the common flu, which originates from animals and kills hundreds of thousands globally on a normal year. So these are things that we've gotten used to, which are by no means natural and are completely preventable, right? If we weren't exploiting animals, these diseases would not have the potential to infect humans.
Exactly. All these past outbreaks have been from animal exploitation and consumption. So.
Yeah. So, okay, so now say someone is watching this who lives in New York. What can they do to help make this law, to help pass this law?
Well, the first thing that anyone living in New York can do is, number one, opt out of this system. Do not shop at these markets. Better yet, switch over your purchase power from buying animal-derived foods and switch over to plant-based ones instead. As we are seeing more and more throughout this pandemic, the entire animal agriculture system is so very broken and so exploitative of not only the animals, not only the environment, but also for the workers employed in this industry. So regardless of where your passion lies in terms of social justice, I think it's fair to say that no one here wants to support these practices. So the very first thing that I would recommend that you do is remove your purchase power from this industry altogether. That you can do right now. The second thing that you can do is you can follow Slaughter Free NYC. We will be posting action alerts as they become available, including we're going to start directing more and more phone calls to Governor Cuomo's office so that he can hear from firsthand from New Yorkers that this is really important to us. You know, just today at the rally that we held in the wake of the announcement of this legislation, we had so many passersby in the community stop to applaud us and engage with us on standing up for this issue, telling us that for years they've been wanting to do something about this and they haven't known what to do and they haven't known that they weren't alone. And that's what we have found at every single one of our actions that involve community outreach. These communities do not want these markets. The other thing that New Yorkers can do is to call up their state representatives. This is a state bill because the primary agency that is deemed to be responsible for these markets is a state agency known as Agriculture and Markets. So you can call your state assembly member and your state senator and let them know that you insist as a New Yorker on the immediate passage of this bill. And that's very easy to find your representative's phone numbers just with a quick Google. Just make sure you're looking for your New York State senator and assembly member rather than the federal.
Amazing. And just to throw out an idea here to help get the ball rolling. Obviously, there's going to be content coming on social media that everyone can share. But, well, actually, I should ask. I'm not sure if it's legal in New York. We should probably look it up. But if you're going to film, you could potentially film yourself leaving a message or calling the representative, put it on speakerphone, and then share that with your friends because, that's a way to catch people's attention, know that this is happening. And just in general, if you're sharing things on social media, your own friends and family, if they're seeing you discuss something, they're going to naturally gravitate towards it because they know you, right? And whether it's doing that idea, we'll double check if that's legitimate to record a call.
Absolutely, and I can verify for you that New York State is a single-party consent state with audio recording. So in New York, it is perfectly legal to record a phone call so long as one of the parties is aware of the recording. It is legal. And yes, if you are comfortable with filming yourself calling your representative, ideally on speakerphone, but it doesn't have to be on speakerphone, if you don't want to invade the privacy of the person answering the line. And if you do that, please do tag Slaughter Free NYC on Facebook and Instagram, and we would love to share your videos and share your images of making these calls.
Yeah, and tag the Animal Save movement as well, because we're going to be doing everything we can to help move this along.
Absolutely. I do want to clarify that Slaughter Free NYC is a collaborative partnership between Animal Save Movement and Slaughter Free Cities. So yes, absolutely always tag Animal Save Movement in these actions as well.
So it's a perfect segue to my next question, actually, which is if somebody lives outside of New York, this is a two-part question. A, what can we do to help New Yorkers? What can we do to be reinforcements for what you're doing there? And B, how can we replicate your success? It's amazing. It's amazing for activists to see that what are once just slogans or things on our signs, close the slaughterhouses, get translated into a potential bill or a law that's going to get passed. That's fantastic. So how can we help you achieve that success, and how can we copy that success?
Well, how other people outside of New York can help New Yorkers is to definitely, again, follow social media, follow the action alerts. You can still call in to New York and say that as a tourist or as a potential visitor, that you do not want to come to New York City until you know that it's safe to do so and these markets are closed permanently. So that's a very impactful thing in a tourist-driven economy under normal circumstances in New York. And also to share out any footage or any news stories that you do see posted online, because that will inspire some more of these national publications, these national media outlets to pick up this story.
Right.
You know, we did get TMZ and we got Inside Edition to air national stories. We have some more in the works.
Oh, wow.
And that's really powerful.
That's
Sorry?
amazing.
Yeah. Oh, well, for national stories though. So ABC was local. Yes, we love ABC. ABC has been doing excellent work with us, covering this issue on a local level. But yeah, the more national outlets that we can get covering this, that's going to be very helpful for New Yorkers. On a local level, if you want to start this kind of initiative, first thing that I would recommend is to reach out to the chapter that started this campaign at Slaughter Free Chicago. They should be they should have a Slaughter Free Cities entity up shortly. This is still new and growing.
Yeah, we're working on a website for slaughterfreecities.org.
So. There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's in the works. But for now, Slaughter Free Chicago is the original chapter, and definitely start getting to work on researching what your local laws are and what current regulations, what current agencies are already involved. You know, it's a lot of legwork in the beginning because every single city, every single state is very different. But you do want to know which entities you're working with, whether you're working solely with city agencies, which is rarely the case when it comes to agriculture, whether you're working primarily with state or some states where you have a lot more, large scale industrial businesses, you might be dealing primarily with federal laws. So you definitely want to get to know your locality and get to know what is already on the books. It's also helpful to look into your local animal cruelty laws. Even though the public health aspect of this issue is getting the most traction, being that this is we're in the middle of a global pandemic, it still is helpful to learn which animal species are included in your animal cruelty laws, and if there are any laws to that regard on the books with regard to slaughterhouse operations. In New York, we do have these laws, and we're going to be working moving forward to help empower NYPD more to recognize cruelty in, for example, chickens. But that's only going to be necessary if we still have slaughterhouses at the end of all of this.
Right. And I just want to say, if any of that seems daunting, on the Slaughter Free Chicago site, and I interviewed Robert last week, that video is already up. They've actually prepared a guide, a step-by-step guide if someone wants to start a local chapter in their city. So you can go through the steps, and they've got amazing advice there to, Chicago shut down 3 slaughterhouses already. So they're definitely onto something that's successful.
Absolutely.
We didn't do an introduction at the beginning because I wanted to jump right into that amazing news. But maybe could you guys just briefly, say who you are, who you're working with organization-wise?
Maureen, would you like to start?
So I'm Maureen Medina. I'm a co-organizer of Slaughter Free NYC, and I joined just about 2-3 months ago. Jill, was it?
Around there.
Okay, and just watching Jill work and show me the ropes has been such a learning curve, and there are just so many layers to the Slaughter Free campaign. I'm also a founder of Peace Over Violence, which is an initiative which focuses on slaughterhouse workers, on finding nonviolent and sustainable employment for them, and also connecting them to legal assistance and mental health care. So we are working well with Slaughter Free NYC because, the existence of these operations, it's not just a single layer issue. There are so many things to consider, so many factors to consider. Number one, it's a health risk for all New York City residents, most especially those that live in these areas, which are usually low-income, marginalized areas. As we say, there are none on Park Avenue, and that's not a coincidence, right? So, and of course the animals, the egregious cruelty that they endure when we don't even need to consume animals there's just no justification. So those are the two campaigns that I'm currently most involved with, and the Health Safe Movement branch.
Amazing.
So
and what about yourself, Jill?
So I'm Jill Carnegie, and I'm co-organizer of Slaughter Free NYC, and I was really proud to help facilitate the collaboration between Slaughter Free Cities and Animal Save Movement after working in a local leadership position for the Save Movement for several months. And I came to this campaign with background working on some of the most controversial issues in New York City regarding animals, including the horse-drawn carriages with night class, and also the campaign of using chickens for kaporos, which is a religious ritual that includes the mass slaughter of chickens in the largest annual wet market in New York City. So that's sort of what led here. I've actually spent a lot of time in these markets for years. I've personally been in the majority of the animal markets operating in New York right now. And we do have a state law in place that restricts the licensing of new slaughter operations within 1,500 feet of a residence. This law was passed in 2008. It's a type of law that's called a mandate. It does have to be renewed every 4 years. It's been renewed unanimously every time it's come up for a vote. And the very foundation for this mandate stated that it has to do with quality of life and to protect the health of residents around these markets, around slaughterhouses. And so the fascinating thing is that they grandfathered in all of these slaughterhouses and live animal markets, while restricting new licenses from being issued. But the reasoning they provided is exactly the reason why none of them should be permitted to operate in a dense city center like New York City. It's absolutely absurd. So based on that law, we decided to work toward the goal of making New York City a slaughter-free zone, because slaughterhouses are terrible for the animals, the workers, communities, and the environment.
Absolutely, and they've essentially laid out the framework for how your law can be successful by putting that in the first place, while making exceptions. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Luckily, we had already done a lot of the research necessary, so we had an idea of the laws we were dealing with, the agencies we were dealing with. We already had lots and lots of documentation footage by the time we started to sync up with Slaughter-Free Cities. So we were fortunate that we were able to really hit the ground running once this collaboration came into effect with Animal Save Movement.
This is extremely exciting. I'm really hoping that this becomes, a global movement, especially, people are at home right now, and that there is ways for you to make a difference, sitting at home on lockdown, making phone calls and sending emails. So I'm grateful primarily for you guys for doing the work you're doing, and I'm grateful for taking the time to sit down with me and do this interview. I guess I should say, lastly, my name is Gabriel Nadler. I work with the Save Movement. I was originally working on a campaign to make slaughter-free university campuses. That is to bring in slaughter-free food policies, plant-based food policies on campus. That's on hold because of the lockdown. Universities canceled. So I'm focusing on the same thing that you guys are now, slaughter-free cities and actually the slaughterhouses themselves. That was supposed to be phase 2 of what I'm working on, but circumstances changed. So
yes, the world is changing every day. If I may actually put out there one thing for anyone in another location, particularly cities, being struck very, very painfully by the COVID-19 pandemic. If you're looking to secure local media coverage, one thing that's really, really relevant right now is that we already know that these types of markets are disease vectors for E. coli, Salmonella, Campylobacter, among any number of other respiratory issues. So that's already known, that's established. And right now, the last thing that we need are any individuals going to hospitals and taking up room in our medical facilities. And so that's a big crux of why it's so imperative that we shut down these operations immediately in the interest of reducing the risk of people getting any kind of illness. We're not saying that COVID-19 started in New York City animal markets. That's obviously not true. but there are plenty of other illnesses to be found. We even have reports that show that multiple influenza viruses have been found in these markets already, that can be transmitted to humans. This is incredibly distressing. So that needs to stop immediately. And that's messaging that anyone in another location can use that is absolutely based in science, based in truth, and really puts this whole thing into perspective as to why this is an emergency that we are facing.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I have to head out now. I just wanted to just leave a final thought to build on what you said, is that obviously heart disease and cancer are intimately connected with animal consumption. There's an enormous amount of peer-reviewed science to back that up, which I'll put in the video details, but it just backs up the point of doing everything we can to stay out of the hospitals, to free up nurses and doctors to treat people who are getting COVID-19 who can't help it,
Yes. Eat plants.
Eat plants.
Absolutely.
That's a perfect final note. I'm so sorry that I got to run. We're definitely going to follow up on this because the campaign's just getting started.
No, that's great. Thank you so much for helping to get this out there.
Absolutely. And thank you guys once again for taking the time.